But I think when you leave your corporate job, you have this vision that you're just going to make it. Like you're one of the few that are taking the leap. And I had proven traction, and it was a huge like ego blow, let's call it. And I suffered internally a lot at the onset of that, because I hadn't realized how, I mean, we're so confident, right? 1 in 3 businesses fail. We never leave your job saying like, I'm going to be the business that fails. And it's not a failure. I got it back up and running. I sold it off, but it was a huge hit. And I think that also just being open that when you leave the job, you have to be ready for the fact that the unexpected can always occur in a business, and to make sure that you are financially, like you have a plan B.
Welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that dares to bring no-nonsense insight to those who have the courage to start, grow, and scale a business. I'm your host, Susan Sly. So what is up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs? I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And, I have a question for you. Are you one of these people who is perhaps a little exhausted? Maybe you know that you're trying really hard and sometimes you're questioning why. Maybe you're thinking, I am a serial prover, and I know because I'm a recovering one. Well, my guest today and I are going to get into that. She spent 10 years with one of the largest corporations in the United States before having the courage to leave and start her own business. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Before we do, head on over to susansly.com. There's some exciting things going on. Number one, if you are a woman who's had a dream of solving a problem and thinking, I want to start a business, I am launching the Femme Boss Incubator with a vision to help 1,000 women start, grow, and scale successful technology companies. So you can apply, go through the link at susansly.com. And then for those people whose applications look really good, you're going to then go to a pitch process. And then if you are selected, we are not only going to come alongside you and help you start your business, grow your business, raise funding. We are also going to build your technology to get your beta version out the door. I mean, it's crazy. Where was that when I needed that? So that is in partnership with some amazing people, including Jared Yellen and Grant Cardone at 10X. So with that, go to susansly.com. I would love for you to apply. And you know what? You might be wondering, can a guy apply? Yes, you can apply. You just have to be a person who loves women. That's it. All right. My guest today is a former unfulfilled corporate employee spending 10 years with Procter Gamble. So we can talk about Swifters now. Before leaving her 6-figure salary and taking a leap to full-time entrepreneur, she is the host of the Dream Life podcast, a platform that empowers listeners to chase down big dreams and redefine success for themselves. She currently resides in Southern California. So she's my state neighbor over there with her husband of 9 years, which in a marriage is honestly like 56 years. And because I've been with Chris, as you well know, for 22 years. So, hey, props out. If it's longer than 7, you're good. And their 2 children who are ages, I think, 3 and 5 now. So Tiffany Paul, welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.
Thank you. And it's almost 10 years and we've been together for 16 years. So yeah, it's real. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And when you think about it in relationships, right, it's crazy. I was at, my husband and I were at our couples Bible study the other night. And, it's like, stand up if you've been married, longer than 5 years, and then 10 years, and then 15 years and 20 years. And there are a lot of really young couples. And then there was this couple of like 30 years and this other couple. And they're still coming to events like this. They've been married 40 years. It's like, wow.
That's crazy. I think the longer I've been married, the more I appreciate it because of it's like the ups and downs of life. And you're like, wow, you're doing this together. And, you get to know yourself better. You get to know each other better. And you never realize that could even be possible. I think in the first few years, you think you know everything about them, not to mention the personal evolution we all go in. And then we still, kind of evolve and then come back together, evolve and come back together. It's a beautiful thing.
Like building a business.
Exactly. He is my business.
Well, think about the number one reason businesses fail is lack of cash flow, which means that people spent more money getting excited and like a wedding, right? It's like you spend more money being excited about, I'm going to start this business, whatever, not that long-term planning. And that's no different than a marriage. Maybe that's the book like I need to write next.
Totally. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Let me ask you this. So, the listeners love this, that, I get they love the origin story. How did you start your first business? And
So
what was it?
yeah. So my first business was actually a single product that I invented called the sleeper scarf. It was a 2-in-1 scarf and neck pillow. And I came up with this idea halfway through my career at Procter and Gamble. And I was like, I'm not sure that corporate life is for me. I kind of need something on the side to keep me fulfilled. I wasn't ready to leave the 6-figure salary and all the benefits and everything yet. We were planning on having children. And I was like, let's ride this out. Let's get the 4 months of paid maternity leave and all the things. So I traveled a lot for work, and those bulky neck pillows were just like obnoxious to carry, ugly to look at, and they just weren't that comfortable. So I was like, why not? I always travel with a scarf. Why not create this pocket and an inflatable pillow? We could adjust it and kind of wrap the scarf to keep me cozy. And I created that on the side. I made a lot of mistakes. My first big deal was with Sky Mall magazine. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
So I sold all of my inventory to them. I was so excited. And then they went bankrupt and never paid me a dime. So I basically started underwater. I mean, most businesses start underwater, right? But I really, really had a huge hit like from the beginning. And it's been, an uphill battle like any other business. But we've been on Good Morning America since then. We're in airports nationwide. I actually sold that business off, and Uncommon Goods now manages it, and I have a licensing deal. So it was my first business. I did it for 7 years. And I actually took the leap from corporate America for that business, knowing that I had something else brewing, which is now my online sleep space called thesleplife.com. So it all kind of related, right? The sleep scarf turned into a curated online sleep marketplace. And now I'm actually doing a product development agency where I help other entrepreneurs bring to life their product. So it's funny how the origin really matters, because they're all stepping stones into what we do today.
I love that. And so I have a question. How did you create your first prototype for that?
I remember asking a friend, first off, my whole network was corporate, right? Nobody had ever created their own business, let alone their own product. That was the hardest part, getting started, which is why I'm so passionate about doing my agency now. And I remember going to somebody who had a clothing line, because that was as close as I could find. And she's like, you'll need a pattern maker. And I was like, oh, a pattern maker. It's so simple now, but I didn't even know the basics of the first place to start is to find a pattern maker. And so I just literally drew it on a piece of paper. She created a pattern, a couple different options. We revised it. And to this day, that's how you start. And there is like a technology, like a tech pack, which is like a digital pattern. But I've always been like a paper and pencil type of person. And then now my factories just kind of take it away from there.
So how many prototypes did you design initially?
I would say about 3. And I actually started my manufacturing in San Francisco, where I was living at the time, because I wanted hands-on experience and I didn't want to place these big orders overseas. And so I give that advice to a lot of entrepreneurs that are just starting out or wanting to play around. There are a lot of factories actually here in the US, especially if you live in a big city, LA, New York, San Francisco, and I'm sure many more. You can probably just Google. And that allowed me to really be hands-on in the prototyping process and be there for that first product run, and also limit, even though it's more expensive per unit, it was worth it to just learn the process from start to finish.
Oh my gosh. Well, now I'm like, I need to ask so many questions about this. So, and that's regardless. And, I want to pause, like whatever kind of business you want to start. And, now we're, I think, close to, whenever you listen to this, like 300 episodes in. And one of the things that stops people, and this, Tiffany, is the how. Like they're like, I know what I want to do. I know why I want to do it. How? So you get the prototype. You're now, thinking, okay, I'm going to go out and I've got to sell this prototype, and you're working full time. So take us in a time machine. What did that look like?
I didn't have kids yet, so I had committed to basically evenings, right? And at that time, we lived in the heart of San Francisco. I remember you can hear everything, like every bus, every person that walks by. I remember everybody always out having fun and going to cocktails. And I was there, working away. It was myself for the entire time while I was at Procter and Gamble, along with a couple interns here and there that I found for free, some certain programs. And it was just plugging away. I hired a PR firm to get the word out and build brand awareness. I eventually connected with a sales agent to help kind of make some of those connections with retailers. I eventually did move after it had proven itself, even though SkyMall was a fail financially, it had proven that there was a market. And so once I kind of proved that somebody will buy the product, then it's all about moving and finding a factory overseas, getting your cost down, finding retail ready packaging. Like that was like the biggest nightmare, like figuring out like it's one thing to ship your product from your website to the person. And then you're like, now it needs to look good on a retail shelf and design a package. And then the pricing goes up again. So there's so many things, but it was just really just me at my kitchen table. There was no office, and it was just a lot of evenings and weekends, but I loved it.
So you didn't see it. What I'm hearing is you didn't see it as a sacrifice. You saw it as an investment, like investing, sweat equity now. And, some people would look at that as a sacrifice, like, oh, I'd rather be at the bar. You're probably not one of those people. If you're listening to this show, you're listening to another show, like, whatever. But you really clearly had the mindset. And can you tell everyone about that? Like, how did you keep your mindset focused on where you were going, given that you're working full time, you're putting in these long days, you had an initial like, oh my gosh, I got SkyMall, like think about how exciting. Then they go out of business. How did you keep your head on straight?
I think for me, I was simultaneously trying to get pregnant. So I think to me, and there was actually a delay in that. So I was like, it was a good kind of distraction. And I know that's a very common challenge that many women face. So to me, I just put all of my energy of creation of life into my business. It was my baby and it did bring me joy. It was a distraction. I've always been someone that loves business. Like bizarrely, it's just I don't know. It's my passion. I love it, and it's just the experience of bringing an idea into physical form just fascinates me. And seeing your product out in the world is enough for me to be motivated. Sure, the money and success was there as well, but I think just seeing an idea in your mind come to life in physical form in a retailer on somebody's body, hearing customer feedback, it's fun for me. My husband golfs. I create businesses, products.
There you go. That's awesome. And so thinking about that, that creative process, and then, you're trying to get pregnant, you've got, this going on, and you have a job,
Mhm.
right? And there is a point where mentally you've exited, because I've been there. You've mentally exited, but you're physically there. How did you navigate that?
So to be honest, I'm someone that I have to be challenged and engaged. I was always a remote employee. So also I will call it that made it easier to kind of split my time. I wasn't like driving or like, I had a little more flexibility, but I actually always tried my best to stay engaged with my work, even though, yeah, I had exited like as my soul. My soul was like, you're not going to be here forever. But I was always asking for more challenging and interesting work because otherwise I would have just totally pieced out. Right. And somebody would have, I don't need the stress of them wondering, like, why is Tiffany not working? Why is Tiffany not performing? And so it seems counterintuitive, but to me, when I'm doing new work and challenging work and exciting work is what keeps me engaged in both. And so I would go out of my way and I would give specifics on what I wanted to work on. I wouldn't just say like, give me anything. I'd be like, I want to learn about marketing on, the professional, healthcare channel. Can I help with, XYZ? So I would be specific, and I was using my job also to better understand marketing, sales, strategy, all of that. So I really stayed engaged as long as I could until I feel like financially, when my business started doing multiple six figures in sales annually, I felt comfortable to leave.
Let's talk about real numbers. And that was like we were for everyone, we there's always like a period before the show starts that I chat with the guests, and Tiffany and I were talking about so many things in my mind. I'm like, we just need to hit the record button here. But I was going to ask you about numbers because it is raw and real entrepreneurship. And people always ask this question: when should I quit my job? So your business is making multiple six figures. Your salary is six figures. But if you're new to entrepreneurship, you have to understand the business could be generating multiple six figures. It doesn't mean you're paying yourself even 1 cent.
Correct.
So were you at the point where you were paying yourself? And if so, like had you replaced your income or a percentage of your income?
I hate that advice because it does not apply to high six-figure earners. To have a startup get to a point where you are paying yourself, replacing your salary would mean realistically that you're really producing like $1 million business.
Thank you for saying that, girl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because in my experience, like I have friends that have $1 million businesses. I have, hit similar annual revenues where with your cost of doing business, with paying your other employees, paying yourself, you're maybe making a six-figure salary at $1 million in revenue. So that advice never worked for me. And so in order to actually take the leap, I had not taken a salary that entire time. When I got to that point, I could finally start taking a modest salary. And so to actually take the leap, I had to downsize my entire life. It was the only way to get from, I'll just give real numbers, like 220 annually. I was pulling 60 from my business. That's a huge like gap in our
household income.
Yeah, our household income. And so we had to downsize our house, our cars, our, travel, our living expenses, our childcare, shopping, babysitters. Like we actually had to sacrifice quite a bit, but I did so knowing that it was temporary, that if the business, that theoretically the business would keep growing. And so I think it would be harder to make that move for saying like, oh, this is how I'm going to live forever. Once you kind of get accustomed to a certain lifestyle, backing it up is difficult. And so it was hard. And then the pandemic hit, which completely stopped travel. So my business went from multiple six figures annually to zero overnight. And that's where I had to pivot and kind of come up with the Slept Life brand and doing the product development agency. And so it was really a blessing because I get so much more fulfillment from these businesses. But I think when you leave your corporate job, you have this vision that you're just going to make it. Like you're one of the few that are taking the leap. And I had proven traction, and it was a huge like ego blow, let's call it. And I suffered internally a lot at the onset of that because I hadn't realized we're so confident, right? 1 in 3 businesses fail. We never leave your job saying like, I'm going to be the business that fails. And it's not a failure. I got it back up and running. I sold it off, but it was a huge hit. And I think that also just being open that when you leave the job, you have to be ready for the fact that the unexpected can always occur in a business, and to make sure that you are financially, like you have a plan B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thank you for being so raw and real, because I love the real numbers, and it's so true there. I've had guests on the show that have like multi-million-dollar coaching businesses. Now, in a business where you're a solopreneur and your time is the product, you can pay yourself more. When you're productizing something, and even a tech product, whatever it is, you're going to, there's always like this phrase drives me crazy, Tiffany. Oh, you make money on the exit. Okay, well, what if your exit isn't for 10 damn years? Like you've got tuitions to pay. Like for us in our house, at the peak of our tuition paying, we were paying almost $300,000 a year in tuitions for our kids.
Right.
And it's like, I can't make money on an exit. I need now freaking money. Right. Yep. And so that's that piece. Did you physically, going through all of that, did it affect you physically? And if so, how?
I just want to also add on to that detail of, in a product-based business, what happens is your cash gets all tied up in that inventory. So we were growing and making bigger and bigger purchases overseas in anticipation of growth. We had just heard back from Bed Bath & Beyond, and then, everything stopped. So I had all my cash in this inventory, and I finally just sold it all like 2 years later. So it is it's not a normal, like a pandemic is not a normal thing to occur, but you just never know what's going to happen. And so, yeah, just physically, I had to really just press pause, which was the first time in my entire life I had probably slowed down. Like I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I always worked multiple jobs. I worked like a pizza, doing like a busser at a pizza place as soon as I could work. I worked 3 jobs in college. I put myself through college, and I obviously had the job at Procter and Gamble. I worked 2 jobs at that point, and then this happened, and I just really had to stop and be like, wow, what is it like to, for me, the narrative was feel unsuccessful, because it was like my whole life I had succeeded achieving the grades, the extracurriculars, the leadership, like their letter jacket, like all this stuff. And I just sat back and I was like, wow, I've been like achieving and striving my entire life. And in the absence of what on paper was a successful business, because we at the time weren't selling any, sure, I had a lot of milestones that could still be attributed to as successful. It was like internally, I just did not feel enough. And so I thought, wow, this is something I really need to look at, because externally I would project as very confident. In my mind, I would have genuinely, truthfully told you, I'm confident, I'm sure of myself. But even though I had a beautiful family, a beautiful home, living in Southern California, all the past success, I felt like a nobody, a nothing. So that was the biggest hurdle that I kind of had to work on before I kind of picked myself back up.
Let's jump into that. That like yeah, and I love this conversation because it needs to be had, right? Like when I thought about what the brand for the show is going to be, I was like, let's just be honest about it. Like, let's not, like, I can't stand where it's like, start your dream business in like 3 hours. Like, no, okay, you're going to quit, because if that's what you bought into, you're going to be very disappointed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that very similar to you. Like I worked 3 jobs. I worked in the hospitality industry through high school, put myself through college, left home at 16, like, and even getting to that point where I got diagnosed with MS in 2000, and my whole life stopped because I went through a divorce. I lost my business. I ended up homeless. Like all of the things that happened was because it was a forced stop. What I love about what you're saying is it was, yes, a pandemic, but there was also a choice to step back and go, okay, this treadmill thing for me is maybe not working. And I traded one treadmill for another treadmill. And that takes a lot of guts. So let me ask you this. In that time where you were saying, I feel like a failure because I had to hit pause, what do you think contributed to that feeling of failure?
Well, actually, I think these feelings started before this even happened. When I left my corporate job, again, there's this narrative of you're going to leave your corporate job and you're going to be your own boss. You're going to feel so free and so good. And very quickly on, I actually started questioning, like, I don't love being isolated. My team was remote. It was a smaller team. I am feeling very exhausted and burnt out, and sure, like hired help, but the money wasn't quite there yet. We talked about that, right? Where I'm not like paying myself. And I was like, is this really the dream, to be your own boss? Sure, I'm out of the constricting corporate box that I never belonged in, but now I'm in this other box. And I really realized I had traded like one narrative for another. And where I had seen through the illusion of, the corporate dream, I had stepped into another illusion, painting entrepreneurship as this very freedom filled lifestyle. And freedom is a core value of mine, feeling free to be who I am, free with my schedule, free financially. And I think I had already been like, wow, if this is not it, then what? So I think my mind was already swirling. And then when it stopped and I didn't feel good, it was like, I just need to stop for a second and be like, do I even want to be in entrepreneurialism? I knew I didn't want a corporate job. And that was a really scary place for me to be. And I'm like, I can't go back, but I don't know what I want yet. And what I eventually realized is that my passion was in consulting and working with other brands. That's my gift. My gift is bringing products to life. And my passion is serving women. I see having your own business as a form of self-liberation and freedom if done correctly and if you're in the right business. So yes, entrepreneurialism was for me. But once I started playing around with, I mean, it just came to me. So I feel like the universe was like, hey, this is what you want to do. This is what you need to do next. My friends started coming. I have this idea for this. I have this idea for this. Because with the pandemic, people started questioning things. I know you left your corporate job. I know you know how to do this. Can you help me with the factory? And it kind of brought me back to life. And so for me, it wasn't that, it was, I pressed pause because I just didn't know what I wanted. And I was really looking inward we saw some healing opportunities as well. So it was in a lot of therapy, crying all the tears and getting over this story of failing, but also just giving myself permission to pivot. Because I think when you take such a massive leap like that, you feel this pressure to like stay and not, move. Like, this is your business. You put all this time. I mean, that was 7 years I put into that business.
Yeah.
Like, you can't pivot, but pivoting was the best thing I did for myself. And I'm finally in touch with those feelings of freedom that are real. You just have to build a business that aligns to you and also supports your freedom financially and in your time.
Yeah. And it's the choice to sell a business or to walk away from a business. It's like getting a divorce. And one of the things, I had the founder of FreshBooks on the show, and FreshBooks is a $1 billion valuation company. And we actually had like a debate on the show, because one of the things I always ask entrepreneurs, like when they're going to start a business, a tech business, what's your exit strategy? And he was like, well, you never ask about the exit strategy. And I'm like, I do, because, and maybe it's more for women, because it's just this, like, you're going to grow this and we're such creators. And then you become attached to it. This business becomes your child. And then it's like, whew, the first day the kids go to kindergarten, that's unnerving. When I took my daughter to college, when I dropped her off at the dorm, I got back to my hotel and I was just bawling my eyes out. I flew her across the country. She started college at BU. And it was like this, oh my gosh, now they have to go out into the world, and business is no different. And I love that you said that, because there's this, we've, on the show, we talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about these concepts, especially, men and women, this comparison, comparison is the thief of joy, right? The famous quote, this need to prove ourselves, and then defining what success is. So how do you know when it's time to exit? How do you know when it's time to take that child and say, okay, go out into the world now, right? It's massive. I want to, so for people listening, and oh my gosh, Tiffany, I mean, I could talk to you for hours, girl. For people listening, they've got an idea, and I'm so excited you're here, because this is, if people have a tech idea, I know exactly what to tell them, but to do a physical product, and that's the spirit of the show. Like, let's take your idea into its inception. Tell us about your business and what you do.
Yeah. So the podcast you mentioned at the beginning, Dream Life Podcast, I actually pivoted that into, I call it Break the Matrix, Wake Up to Your Dream Life Now. And the agency itself is Break the Matrix Agency. And it's kind of a wild out there name, because it represents my agency in that we like to think not just outside the box, outside the program that we live in. I just feel like so many of us are living in these narratives, and even with business advice, it gets like monotonous. A lot of it's the same. And so my agency, we just come together where we really look to innovate on products. There's a lot of contract manufacturers, which is products, for those of you who are not familiar, which is companies that will say, hey, you want to do a lotion? Well, here's like 5 formulas, maybe add some lemon seed to it and put your own label. Here's your own skincare line. And there's nothing wrong with that. But an agency like mine is really dedicated to disrupting and innovating in the market. As silly as my little cheeky sleeper scarf may sound, I innovated and I have 2 patents on it. And so we look to innovate and disrupt and really solve real world problems. And so people come to me with product ideas and problems, and we look to disrupt. And often we will file patents together and figure out that unique, value proposition and white space in the market. So it's called Break the Matrix Agency. And we work with, products from, we have crock pot liner we're working with right now, and some yoga mats that we're innovating on. So a little bit of everything. So if you have an idea and you just don't know where to start, we can help you, whether you have the product already or you're working on your first manufacturing run.
That is awesome. Now I know where to send people. I'm
Yes.
super, super excited about that, Tiffany. And Tiffany, I want to thank you for being here. And if anyone has an idea for a product, and that's the thing, is like, we said so often people have the why, they have the concept, but they don't know how. And that's why entrepreneurs need agencies like yours. So break the matrix agency, and follow Tiffany on Instagram at Tiffany Paul. And so
that's
Tiffany,
new too. I'm Tiffany. I've like changed everything.
You have
yeah, I was like, I rebranded everything. I am on Instagram at I am Tiffany Paul.
I am Tiffany Paul. So y'all she is Tiffany Paul. So just, okay. So follow her on Instagram at I am Tiffany Paul. And everyone, listen, this episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, share it on social, tag me, tag Tiffany, give us a shout out in your stories, in your reel, whatever it is you want to do. We would love to hear from you. I'm an avid tweeter. I've gone back to Twitter because I'm kind of obsessed with it. So it's like, I don't want to have to post and put on makeup and do a dance. I'm not going to do a dance. Like, no, I'm just not, I'm a tech video. So like, I'm back on Twitter, y'all. So just tweet me and I'll be really happy about that. As long as it's something nice. If you're not a good human, you're probably not listening to my show anyway. So anyway, with that, God bless, go rock your day. Please share this episode on social with everyone you care about. And this has been another episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.